Hi, everyone. So this is a personal story. It is a story about my heart. I was born with a heart condition called complete heart block. In layman's terms, what that means is my heart beat a little bit differently. It beat more erratically, less consistently, less reliably, and on the whole, slower than a heart should. It also meant that one day I would need a pacemaker. But I didn't need one just yet, so together with my parents, the doctors decided to wait and see when that day would come. In kid terms, though, or at least in my terms, this meant I'm flawed. I'm defective. There's something wrong with me. This feeling, this belief, it got inside and it stuck. So I denied the reality of my heart. I denied this truth. I tried to push it aside. I tried to be better, stronger, just as good as everybody else. And it became a secret. I'll give you one example of how this played out in my everyday life growing up. I was at camp, and we were going to go on a bike ride. There was a big bike ride being planned. I was excited, ready, and raring to go, and just as we were about to leave, the counselors turned around and said, "Hang on, Camille, we just realized you have a heart condition. It's not safe, you can't go." And I was mortified. First of all, they weren't supposed to know. No one was supposed to know this about me. It was a secret. And secondly, what do you mean I couldn't go? What do you mean I wasn't just as good? What do you mean I wasn't as capable? So I begged them. I insisted. And finally they relented. They let me ride. I was fine. But then there was another activity, swimming. We were supposed to swim laps and tread water. And I tried. I got out there, but the truth was I just didn't have the endurance. I wasn't really capable of this task. And after trying, I had to concede defeat, and I asked to stop. But the counselors, this time, they said no. They yelled at me and told me to keep going, just tough it out. So here I was, caught between, on the one hand, wanting to be just as good and just as capable, but on the other hand, truthfully, knowing deep down I was a little bit different. On a regular basis, I didn't actually think that much about my heart, but there were times when I had to confront it. Particularly on an annual basis when I would go to see the cardiologist, and they would do tests, and they would also hook me up with something called a Holter monitor. Basically what that was is there was a recording device, and attached to a bunch of wires that were then stuck to my chest, and I would have to carry this thing around for 24 or 48 hours and then come back, and the doctor would be able to get insight into what was going on with my heart. And by the way, if you have seen one of these things lately or had to use one of these things lately, let me just remind you that this was the 80s, and it was like this big, bulky VHS tape size thing, and not one of today's fancy little iPod models. But anyways, I hated it. I hated going in for these appointments. I hated being wrapped up in these wires. And I hated the sticky gray residue they would leave long after the appointment was over, and they just stuck there like a memory of something I didn't even want to acknowledge in the first place. But most of all, I hated how vulnerable it made me feel. When I was a teenager, in particular, I would deal with this by going in and being tough. I would come in, my combat boots and my ripped jeans and an edgy swagger and a big chip on my shoulder. And the nurse would take out her pad and pen as if to make a list and say, "And what are your symptoms?" And I'd say, "I don't have any symptoms. I'm asymptomatic." It wasn't quite the response she was used to getting. But after she would hook me up and she would say, okay, you can go on with your daily life, you can go back to school. And I would think, as if I would go out in public like this, as if I would show my face in school. No, I was going home to hide. And I would leave totally different from how I came in. Instead of that tough, edgy swagger, I would leave hunched over, awkward, and ashamed. So I lived with knowing that one day, this thing that I didn't want to look at, this big, scary thing, the fact that I would one day need a pacemaker, this was going to come. And it did come. I was in second year university, in class, just another day, and for some reason, suddenly, the world started to spin. And it kept spinning. I was having a dizzy spell. And as I stumbled home, I knew, deep down, I knew this was it. It was my heart. This was the moment that was going to change everything. And somewhere in that, even in all that fear, after carrying around this weight of denial and shame and fear for so long, there was also this little kernel of relief. So I told my parents and I told the doctors, and the doctor said, yep, this is what we look for. It's time to get a pacemaker. I was so scared. But I agreed. The doctor said I was doing the right thing. What they didn't say was how much it would hurt. They didn't say how much it would hurt to take this secret and have to tell people, to have to tell professors so I could change my exams, to have to tell family members, and most of all, to have to acknowledge it to myself. I felt like this thing I'd been keeping inside for so long was suddenly splattered everywhere, exposed for everyone to see. It was humiliating. They also didn't tell me how much it would hurt. They didn't tell me how much it would hurt after the surgery. Hell, they didn't tell me how much it would suck to be lying awake on an operating table while the doctors worked on my heart. And they didn't tell me how challenging it would be to accept a piece of technology into my body, to accept that this was my heart now, forever changed. I did start to accept it, though. And partly I was able to do that because it wasn't just helping me live, but it was helping me live more. I started to do things I could never do before. I started to run. I remember running my first 10K race. I was so proud. I climbed the Rocky Mountains, right to the top. And I could feel my heart beating in my chest. I could feel the energy. And I remember going to a job interview, and with all the nerves, my heart, oh my God, I thought it was going to pound out of my chest. I thought, is this what other people have to put up with? But it was kind of exhilarating too. But even as I started to feel a little bit of pride and a little bit of gratitude for what I had experienced, I still kept it a secret. It was still hard to even say the word pacemaker. I still kept my scar covered. And if I did tell anyone, it was carefully selected and full of anxiety. So how, over all these years since then, did I go from keeping this a secret to being able to talk about it with you today, tell all of these people? Well, I'd love to tell you that there was that one magical moment, that there was one transformational thing that happened, but you know what? it wasn't like that. It's been a slow process, step-by-step process. And, you know, as time has gone on, I have found more of that acceptance. You know, today, I have a big tattoo on my back, a great big heart. It invites questions. Didn't really think about that when I was getting it for some reason. And I know what I'm capable of. I know what I'm physically capable of. I can kick ass in a boxing ring. I can sprint to the end of a 10K race. I can climb mountains, real and metaphorical. You know, I was going to come here today and talk about this transition from denial to acceptance to love, and finding that love for my heart. And you know, I do love my heart, I do. But here's another secret, and this is one I don't tell people. It still hurts. It's still hard to say the word pacemaker. You know, sometimes I look at that lump of metal in my chest, I can see it. And I think about the wires wrapped around me. Or I feel that lump of metal, and I don't feel like the me that's climbing mountains. I feel like that little girl struggling to tread water. I'm not here to give advice or words of wisdom, but I will say this. If there is something that's a part of you, something that's a part of your past, something that maybe you're keeping a secret or you don't like to talk about, well, maybe it's worth sharing, because it's a part of you. It's a part of your story. Sometimes it's easy to love my heart, and sometimes it's hard. And that's the truth. And you know what? That's my truth. And that truth, I love. Thank you.